Well, welcome, Gunnar Christensen, fellow sailor. Welcome to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast. Thanks for taking a little bit of time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Real pleasure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So every sailor, I think, thinks about the idea of going and sailing solo and nonstop around the world at least once in their life. But very, very few of them will actually get into a position where they start working towards that, and even less will put their money where their mouth is and sign up for something as epic as the Golden Globe 2026 race. But that's exactly what you have done, sir. So first off, hats off to you for stepping up to the plate. It's quite a big challenge you're heading into. But I guess my first question, and this is a really interesting conversation that we're going to be able to have, because obviously I've done the trip in a little bit of a different sort of form, but I have, there's something that I think drives someone to want to do that trip in particular, a solo nonstop, that is very unique. And I want to hear about exactly kind of, I guess, to start things off, just who or what were some of the inspirations that were pulling you towards risking it all and trying to race around the Southern Ocean?
Well, it's people like you that plant the seed in my head. So listening to you and Matt Rutherford, and it's funny, I took a little break from sailing before. I had my daughter's now 12, and I was a stay-at-home dad after when she was young. Still did some dabbled in sailing, but we moved to England 7 years ago, and then to the south coast in the Solent area 3 years ago. And that's when it hit me real hard that I missed sailing so much. I've done it my whole life, but took this little bit of a hiatus. When living in West London, I ran two barges for a charity for people with disabilities. That kind of got me back into yachts a bit, even though it was up on the Thames. But then when I hit the Solent and then got a job with the old Discovery Yachts Yard, and then it turned into Ocean Shipyard. Fortunately, they went under, but I worked for Southerly Yachts, and my desk mate, who was in purchasing, was kind of an armchair adventurist, and he gave me a book. Who's the guy who's still alive, who's almost 90, he does high latitude sailing and hiking. He brings groups hiking. Do you know that guy?
To do and takes people hiking. Well, I know Skip Novak does that, but he's nowhere near 90.
He's down south.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have his book. It's sitting on my bedstand, and I'll have to remember his name. This guy kept feeding, this guy in purchasing kept feeding me these books on adventure. And I go, I can do this, because all of a sudden Ocean Shipyard went under, and I ended up managing these two builds, a 48-foot southerly that was being finished, and then a 42-footer. And these projects now just kind of wrapped up. Excuse me. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, I can do an adventure. Why don't I just do an adventure? And I thought, no one's going to pay attention if I just go sail around the world through the Panama Canal on, my current boat I have. Why not just go whole hog and do the GGR?
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, those are two very different ways to get around the planet. Obviously the trade wind belt, for me, that's always been sort of the possible retirement plan, because one, you're gonna need at least like 5 years, I would think, to really see it all and visit all the places. But two, you also need a good fair bit of money to do it. The nice part about a solo nonstop is that once you leave, it's not like you're shopping on Amazon anymore. There's no stops to get purchases, all that sort of stuff, and so you can do it a little bit on a budget. And wow, okay.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I'll be honest, I don't want to spend my nest egg.
Yeah.
I'm a bit fortunate where I do have a little bit in reserve. I'm selling some property, and I don't want to blow through this, but I have enough where I can buy a boat, and but there's no way anyone's going to take you seriously unless you pay that first entry fee,
Yeah.
which
Which was how much, if you don't mind me asking?
four
I mean,
four
I know it's all public knowledge.
4,000 euros.
4,000
So
euros.
$4,400. And I'm very lucky that the owner of the Southerly 42 that is just being finished now, I've been working with him for a year now. I've
Hmm.
done a bit of sailing with him on the South Coast. He and his crew, great guy from Alabama, and it's great to take him to the Royal Leamington Yacht Club and the crew with that Alabama accent. It's
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
But anyway,
Actually, believe it or not, I when I was doing my sailing over in the Solent all those years ago, all the guys, and the vast majority of them were English or Scottish. They would love to listen to me do the radio check with the Coast Guard because I would always do it in a really thick Southern accent because they just thought it was absolutely hilarious. And oh
yeah,
man, no, they
it's
love
funny.
that.
It's funny you mentioned that because I'm crew with the RNLI in Leamington. I live 10 seconds away from the station, and
Yeah.
when I get on the radio to go talk to Solon Coast Guard, it's the same thing. I put on a. I'm from New England, but I put on a Texas drawl.
Yeah, right.
And I say buoy instead of boy, and oh, it drives me nuts.
Well, you got to kind of represent it a little bit. And when I think of an American accent, the first thing that comes to mind is sort of that Southern accent because I think the Midwest accent that I'm sort of blessed with, I guess, is a little bland. It might have made it into all the movies or whatever, but I don't know. When I think America, I think like you, Texan or Southern, and it's got that perft cadence. I love it.
Yeah,
It's too funny.
the more proper the English accent, the heavier my Texas accent comes out.
Yeah, right. Oh God, that's great.
But yeah, so back to putting your money where your mouth is with this
Yeah.
GGR. Is I've had a good chance with this my client with the Southerly 42 to sit and chat with him, and I told him about this, and he said, "Listen, I'll be a minor sponsor, and it's time to I really wanted to get going on this, so I wrote to him a week ago and said, listen, you said you want to be a minor sponsor. How about helping me with this initial fee to get my name up on the skipper's board,
Yeah.
on the GGR website?" And yeah, he said, "Yep, absolutely. So I'll help you with that as long as you. I'll pay your expenses, but you'll help me sail the boat across on the Ark race in November." So, all right, yeah, why not? That's fine, no worries.
Nothing. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Well,
Yeah,
that's kind of I think it's one of the added challenges when you're doing a race like that is that not only do you have to sail around the world, but you're going to have to do the sponsorships and the fundraising and all that, but also that is the nice part is that you get to do that. So you're not just going to blow, like you said, your whole nest egg on trying to run this race and do it all on your own back because you're on the world stage, because Don's doing such a great job at putting up these Golden Globe races. Do you think you'll have pretty good luck filling in all the gaps and getting all the money that you'll need?
that's a good question, and my way of thinking about it is, listen, the $4,000 is non-refundable, but luckily I've had some help with that. The other
Right.
thing is, we can talk more in depth about boats, but I've looked at a few. My thought is a trade win 35 just because there are three available nearby, two in good condition, one in not so good condition. If I go for the one that's not in such good condition and something falls through, if I can make it into better condition, I probably won't lose money on an investment like that. So the other thing is I've built up such a good repertoire with the local like the local marina in Leamington. I'm hoping that I can work something out with them. But again, unless I have a boat and my name's up there, I can't really approach people yet. So I need to. That's why I need to make this initial start. Harkin, I work with them up in Hamble quite a bit with both these southerly yachts, and
Hmm.
I'm on a very good first name basis with the guy who's head of the Harkin Solent. Maybe something can occur, with re-rigging with them. Selden, Mass. I may have burned bridges with them because I'm a hard ass. I'm a Yankee, and I don't take any crap. So Seldons can sometimes be a little difficult when it comes to when pinning them down on delivery dates, and I may have
Right,
raised the
right.
voice with them a few times, but hopefully they'll overlook that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like you definitely have a lot of connections over there. Do you still have connections back in the States, with any of the sort of, not necessarily just the sailing companies like like North Sails and all those guys, but with any other bigwigs that, because with some of these companies and corporations, if you get somebody who's really following and passionate about it, they can chip off a little something that's nothing to them and is
Yeah,
everything to you.
that's definitely a thought. I was thinking if it doesn't pan out, if it's kind of a dead end in the UK, which I hope it's not, but there's also I want to be a U.S. entrant, so that could be a little tricky. Um, but my other thought is, my connections with New England, especially Maine, and I know Rockland well, and
Oh
um,
yeah.
yeah, so I used to work up in Rockland, and I worked for Lyman Morse Boat Building.
Oh, you work for Lyman Morris. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
as a project manager on one of their big, is actually a big power yacht, 94-foot power yachts. And I worked for Hinckley. My first job was running one of their Hinckley 43-foot tethered racing boats. I know they're, Kyler Morris of Morris Yachts. I know
Right, right, right,
they're
right.
now
Did
not
you?
building boats, but I maybe can rekindle something in New England,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which could be an option. And then in that case, I'm looking at a Cape Dory 36,
Oh,
which
really?
I don't know a lot about, but it's waterline length, and it comes in when you look at sailboat data, comes in pretty good, I think, as far as being a speedier boat, which I never thought it would be, but it's not that heavy.
Right, right,
Um,
right, right.
and I don't, for anyone that's looking for a boat in the GGR right now, they'll probably know about it, but I'll just say anyway, it's for sale in Antigua without an engine, which kind of is appealing to me anyway because you
Yeah,
can.
lighten the boat up a little bit.
Like
That's
I
good.
was actually thinking
You're not
if
going to
it
be able to
wasn't
use it
coming up
anyway.
if it wasn't coming up in hurricane season, I'd go down, throw an outboard mount on the back, and get it out of the harbor and sail it up, to East Coast someplace. But
Right,
right
right,
now, I
right.
don't know if it's getting a little close to what's supposed to be a pretty intense hurricane season, so that probably won't happen.
Yeah, that one's on my mind because Sparrow is just up there, just north of Beaufort, North Carolina. And I'm trying to figure out if I want to take it a little further north up into, I might be taking it into the Chesapeake, to possibly put some science gear on there, kind of working with Matt Rutherford on a possible trip. But if not, I was even dreaming about maybe take it up to Maine in July and go see all the old friends up there.
Well,
But
I've heard that you've been up there only working, and you are, people ask me, with all the sailing you've done around the world, where's the best cruising you've ever been sailing? I go, Penobscot Bay.
Penobscot Bay. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful. It's like the Caribbean of the North, but
It,
only for about, I don't know, 2 months.
yeah,
And then
exactly.
it all
Yeah.
closes right in on you.
My
Oh my
favorites,
God.
yeah, June and September through the first week of October are my favorites up there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, what always surprised me about Maine was how hot it got in August. Like
Yeah.
90 degrees up there. You're sweltering. That was when we would go swimming right there in Rockland Harbor, right off of Night Marine's dock, and it's like refreshing. You hit that water, it's 58 degrees, but man, it felt fantastic.
In 1986, when I worked on the schooner Heritage in Rockland, Maine, man, you never would have thought about getting into the water there. I
Yeah.
hope it's changed a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems a lot cleaner. I know that seaweed factory that's right there, that DuPont one. I think I've heard stories about it in the past. I don't want to say anything I don't know about, but yeah, it seems decently clean these days up there.
Yeah,
So you'll be
it was
glad to
called
know that
it was called Sea Pro in the 1980s, and we had
that
a
plant.
line we had a line that went over to the Sea Pro, seawall. That
Yeah.
was my job to go recover because I was the young crew member on board.
Right. Make the kid do it.
You go recover the Grody Sea Pro line. Oh, he's awful.
well, one of the with all the attention and the fabulous race that Cole Brewer ran in the global solo challenge. I always mix that one
global
up.
solo challenge. Yeah.
I think there's a bit of sort of enthusiasm and fire here in the United States for this whole solo sailing thing. And, it's obviously the U.S. has never been a huge fan base for that sort of sport. But, right now might not be a bad time to sort of reach back stateside and see if there's any enthusiasm for getting some more sponsorship over here. But if regardless, where are you planning on staging and getting the boat ready for the race?
Well, I was thinking, South Coast UK.
Okay.
But I'm not, I was thinking if I get a boat let's say this fall, do I do my first initial sail over transatlantic and then base myself over in the U.S. I'm kind of, still that's an open book. And Maine, I would love to have it be in Maine. I just wish I had Cole Brower's looks and age. And then I'd be all set.
Don't we all? Don't we all? Trust me, I know, man. Holy smokes, yeah. It was pretty fabulous to watch her run that race, and obviously very, very different style of race. I mean, my trip was 271 days. I would assume in a trade wind 35, you could do it in what, 180, 200, something like that.
I think I would be over the moon. I think to do it in that time. I would probably plan on 250.
250. Okay. Okay.
But, just that's what I should plan on. And even what was Guy Waits? He was 280 something.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because I was doing a little research on the trade wind 35 because you had said that was sort of your prospect boat, and I actually read one of the articles from Guy about. I think it was one of the delivery trips on the boat, and he got a severe knockdown, and it bent his mast like a banana, and all these other sort of things. Yeah, it was pretty interesting. But I mean, it seems like it's definitely a solid boat, and there's been other ones in the GGR, correct?
Yeah, there have been a few of them. They haven't. Puffin unfortunately was abandoned in the South Atlantic.
Yeah,
on the last one. Guy lost his life raft as his second deal. His problem was anti-foul, and he had to pull into Cape Town. So
right.
Yeah, one of the and some people, the Dutch guy who won in 2018-19, Guy, I think, copied his anti-foul job, and then it's funny where the first guy didn't have an issue, and he won the race.
Yeah,
and Guy had catastrophic growth of what do they call them? Zebra musk.
No, the gooseneck barnacles.
Gooseneck barnacles, yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, I had them on my boat, and I also sort of knew that was coming, and so I had a big scraper and a couple of different like broom handle things, and I couldn't get the whole keel. But I didn't have to get in the water. In the Southern Ocean, there's going to be plenty of time in between these gales where you're like flat becalmed. The rolling sea. But I was able to scrape from the deck quite often. And the amount that were trailing off into the depths was pretty substantial. And I waited to actually dive and scrape the boat until I was well north in the South Atlantic after I rounded Cape Horn. But, it's one of those things where I know the fleets have been plagued by the bottoms of the boats, but that's like sort of part of the job out there is you got to get in there and clean that up and get that boat going fast.
I bet, yeah, and I know Kirsten was she's pretty fearless. So apparently I know there are great whites around Cape Town, but I had to get in anyway and go clean the bottom. So
yeah, man, just summon your inner Knox Johnson. I mean, his story about essentially he's got to fix that leak in his boat, and he's waiting around, and then this shark comes up, and he freaking has to get the gun out because he's got to
Yeah.
deal with this leak before all this stuff happens, and then to proceed to hop in after that, knowing that you've just dispatched a big shark, and so there's
Yeah.
blood in the water. Oh my God, like that guy was crazy. But he also used to, I believe, just hop in and swim alongside Sue Haley as she was under sail,
That is crazy.
which only a 29-year-old, I think, would ever do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to do that. That's for sure. Yeah. When you had the growth, the problem that I hear, some of the guys, the Jeremy Bagshaw had an issue as well, is even the scraper they couldn't make a dent even with a scraper. They were
Really?
so tenacious. So you were able to make a dent then with.
Yeah. And I it was something I sort of kept up on. I mean, I watched them grow, and I think by the equator, I started seeing little tiny ones, right by where, the gudgeons are, the rudder and the hull. And I kind of was like, I'm not in a huge hurry. I mean, I know I'm racing the winter time down in Cape Horn, but at the same time, I wasn't like, I'm not matched up against other people in this physical race. And I don't know, anytime, it's one of those things where and it was shocking to me how many times I was becalmed in the Southern Ocean, but when it happens, you got time on your hands. And if you can figure something out where you can be a little bit proactive and productive, it not only gets things done on the boat, but it also keeps your mind in the game. Because,
Yeah.
it's one of the worst things a solo sailor who's just so isolated for so long can do is just sit and think and not do anything. It's like, if you start to feel like you're losing it a little bit, then hey, you know what? Find a project, or like Knock Johnson always said, go read a book.
Right.
Bang, there you go.
Yeah.
Take your mind off it, because the wind is eventually going to fill back in, and then bang, you're going to be off on your way. Not that I need to tell you, because I mean, just kind of switching gears here. And I know we'll come back to more about the boat and stuff, but as far as the experience you have up into this point, as far as sailing across oceans, all that sort of stuff, you just give us like kind of a brief roster of some of the bigger trips.
Yeah. So I've been a yacht captain pretty much my whole working career. I did go to university in Maine, University of Maine, but in the summers I wandered down. I took 2 years off between high school and college and went and sailed a Baltic 51 down and bummed around a little bit down in the Caribbean. And then said,
a vagabond, good
vagabond.
man.
Yeah, I was in your neck of the woods. I ended up doing some construction work in Coral Bay in the Virgin Islands in between.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. In between trying to find boat jobs and it wasn't really pressure from my parents so much as I just thought, what, let me get back to school and get a degree, which I've never used it. No one's ever asked me for my degree.
Let me see what sort of degree you got.
Yeah, well, big deal. Yeah. So during my first summer being in university, I said, well, let me go down to the Hinckley yard and see if they need any boat deliveries done or have any work to be done in the yard. And I met with Hank Halstead, who now works for Northrop and Johnson. He's quite a famous. He started the Nantucket Bucket and then the St. Bart's Bucket races.
Oh wow, okay.
But at the time in the late '80s, he was a broker for Hinckley. I come into his office and he goes, "Well, I didn't even have my 100-ton license yet. I was about to sit for it. I was 20 years old." And he said, "Well, we need a captain for our Ted Hood Hinckley 43 for the summer." I said, "Oh, you're thinking of me?" And he said, "Yeah, why not?" And he looked out the window and he goes, "See that boat down there? What flag is it flying from the starboard spreader?" I said, "It's solid blue." He goes, "What would that be?" And I said, "Owner not on board." He goes, "Very good. You got the job."
Wow. And then, hey, just fake it till you make it in that sort of situation, right? You got to go for it. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. So that all of a sudden, I'm running this Hinckley 43 for summers and going to university. And in the winter, I was diving for sea urchins and making money to help pay for university. And I ended up graduating from university, and I didn't even think about my diploma or anything.
Yeah, get
I
me
was
on
on
the water.
I was on the next boat down. I was actually when by then I had a Doug Peterson 34, old out to pasture IOR boat, and I took it down to 1991. I took it down to Newport, Rhode Island, and was doing day work, looking for work on big yachts going south, and living on my boat in the cheap anchorage off the yacht club there. And then this is where I know you've got the perfect storm, where that's where
yeah.
That's why you decided on a westerly. Well, I had to deliver my boat back in October of 1991, and guess what storm I was in?
Yeah, that was Hurricane Grace, wasn't it?
Well, it was the perfect storm, but we didn't know it was the perfect storm then. And the book came out, and I had two friends from university. I called them up and said, "Hey, get your butts down to Newport. We need to go deliver my boat back because I got a job in a week. I need to get back to Newport and get down and help sail this boat down to the Caribbean." So they come down, and they end up stealing a sign from a pub, and I went to bed early. And long story short is the police ended up on my boat at 2 a.m. looking for them, but they had jumped in the water underneath the dock and were breathing in between the pontoons.
Nice.
And the police were like, "Where are they?" I go, "I don't know what you're talking about." Because
I haven't seen anybody here.
And the police leave, and they come up and go, and I go, "What did you guys do?" I go, "Get on the boat. We're leaving now." So we go up to Onset, in the Cape Cod Canal.
Yeah.
By about 8 or 9 in the morning, we sailed up Buzzards Bay, and I'm listening to the forecast. It's supposed to blow 35 knots from the southeast. I thought, we'll print up the storm jib, and it's fair. It's a fair, we're going for Booth Bay Harbor area.
Yeah.
Because my family's house is in Christian's Cove. And I thought, well, it's going to be an exciting night. So, and the old timer at the fuel dock said, "Gonna blow tonight. You're really going to go in the Gulf of Maine?" I go, "Yeah, it'll be fine." What else? I was 20 years old, 21.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well,
we only make that mistake once usually.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly.
Before we learn about that.
So anyway, my friend, my crew member, he called me up. He had a girlfriend in Gloucester, and a week later, he called me up and said, "That storm we're in, it was, what, the fishing fleet in Gloucester is decimated. And it was a serious storm." I go, "Really?" And then it was 2 years later. I can't remember when the book came out. I know my grandmother had a copy, and he called me up 2 years later. He goes, "Hey, have you read The Perfect Storm?" "No, I don't like reading books like that." And I go, "But my grandmother has a copy." He goes, "Open it up and read the date in the beginning." Yeah. I go, "Oh, was that the storm we were in?" He goes,
"Wow, that book by Sebastian Junger is it's unbelievable." I mean that one, and the other one that sort of takes place in that area, or at least a little closer to home near George's Bank, is Fatal Forecast. And off the top of my head, I can't remember who wrote it, but it was took place in the 80s. That. Yeah, and the forecast was for 25 knots, and then 24 hours later, it was blowing 100. Yeah, and the sea fever went down. Yeah, it's Bob Brown's son, I think.
Was it NOAA Weather Radio they broadcast the wrong?
Yeah, well, they actually had a malfunctioning buoy that they knew about that they did not tell everybody that they had a malfunctioning buoy. They just continued to put the forecast out. So, luckily those days are a little bit in the past. I actually just had a podcast with John Bilger, and he's the founder of Predict Wind.
I just listened to it. Yeah, fantastic podcast.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, you guys are going to be, well, I shouldn't say that, because with this challenge you're about to embark on, you're pretty much looking at the clouds and the barometer, aren't you?
Yeah, here's where I'm a little conflicted. Back to GGR is maybe you can clarify this. I'm fine with weather facts and RDF positioning and things like that. But from what I understand, I haven't now. Granted, I'm 57 years old, so when I was first sailing as a kid, my dad and uncle, that's
Yeah,
all.
you
That's
remember
all
it,
we
right?
used, and I
Right.
grew up using weather facts all the time. So, but this, I understand there aren't as many weather fact stations to rely on now. Is that true?
I can only imagine there's only a handful left. I mean, those all those archaic old technologies slowly have been faded out. I mean, the only example I can be sure of is, back in the day, I used to always take a little world band shortwave radio to try and tune in to news stations and things like that from anywhere in the world. And back in the early 2000s, even you could listen to the BBC, or I think it was the Voice of America. I
Yeah,
do that now because I still have the little radio, and you might pick up a few stations from the Middle East or from China, but there's next to nothing out there anymore, and it's just because nobody's really using that stuff, and so whoever had to pay the bill for it finally realized they were doing it, and I think are just cutting them off. But I don't know what all the exact rules are that are set up for the GGR. I'm sure you're going to become a very good student of that, so you know exactly what you can and can't do. But I essentially would think, yeah, I mean they're trying to place you back in what, pre 1980s, right?
yeah, which is fine because that's kind of where I came from. So
Yeah, yeah.
I've always done celestial. I'm not the greatest single sideband or HF radio operator, but you know, I've used it a lot in the past. So because my back to kind of what I've done is, after university, I just kind of like you. I think I jumped on every boat I could, whether it was New
Oh
England,
yeah.
Caribbean, northern routes to the to the Med and that way. So
How
um,
many how many times have you crossed the Atlantic?
I've done five transatlantics, and none of them have been east to west. I've always done, well, I guess the hard way across, that you would, in quotes, air quotes, you would say.
Right, right. The
Yeah,
further north route where you get
yeah,
bashed around. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I mean,
And
twice. I have to, in full disclosure, two of those were on a 150-foot Icelandic research vessel, which still are. We did go. We went over Mexico to the Med, and then we went North Sea up through northern Norway, Faroe Islands, and
oh wow, yeah,
Iceland, and then down in late fall. So,
yeah.
yes, it was a power boat, but it was, those waters.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it was.
Well, we
So,
went. I took a job. The owner of this like 98-foot beautiful, I think it was like Frere's design sailboat. Wanted it in Turkey, and it was the middle of winter, and we took it across in February from Antigua, and
oh God,
yeah, but that boat motored at, I don't know, 14 knots or something like that. We only ever really used the jib and everything, and I think we made it across and all the way to Turkey in 40 days or something with quite a few stops. But boy, the swell that was coming from the higher latitudes up north, holy
oh yeah,
smokes! We saw, I think, up to like 40 or 50-foot swell. You could fit a stadium in between these things. They weren't
yeah.
dangerous, but to see the impression, how impressive the ocean can become, even if it's days away from the actual storm that's creating it. It's like, holy smokes.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? With and I'd love to pick your brain, because the Southern Ocean does scare me, but it's
Yeah. Oh yeah.
some of those waves where but the worst. I don't need to tell you anything, or even some of your listeners either. But the worst waves I've been in have been the short, steep ones, really.
Oh, the
And
most dangerous, for sure,
yeah,
for sure. But what'll happen, and I will never be able to get it out of my head, because I remember as you're heading down and down and down, and you get into the South Atlantic, probably south of 25 degrees south, and the first day that you start to see a big southerly swell rolling up, like a
oh
southwest.
yeah,
Oh, that's when the chill sort of runs down your spine. And then for me, because I was able to download grid files onto my computer, I can remember, I'd pick a box that brought me all the way down to just about 40 degrees south, and I'd see the top edge of these lows, and I'm like, that's where I'm going, and it's already blowing 60, and it's just like,
Yeah.
holy cow. You start really questioning your life choices at that point, for sure.
Oh,
But the nice part is, by the time you've gotten down to that point, you've already sailed essentially across 2 oceans. You're getting your sea legs, so to speak, and you're kind of like, all right, let's get into this game and let's go for it.
yeah. That's the unknown. I say I've done 5 transatlantics, and this is all I've done in my life. But I don't go into the GGR at all thinking I have any sort of advantage at all because it's I haven't seen the Southern Ocean, but I've seen enough to know. Wow, it's just you need to have such respect and go into it super prepared. And
Oh yeah.
that's why I think a GGR boat is. I like the idea of some of them have put in watertight hatches in the companionway. Fiberglass insert with a watertight hatch, and just going into it knowing, listen, there's going to be for sure knockdowns, and you just need to say, listen, when I'm rolled, what am I going to do?
Yeah. I had a term for it. I said, I need to get the boat Southern Ocean ready, and that meant, the floorboards over my water bladders and water tanks and stuff. Those are like, they're bolted down.
Yeah,
It's not one of those things where I'll just use the little latch thing. It's like, no. There's actual bolts and 2x4s and things like that, because I have to expect that this boat will go upside down at some point, and I don't want anything to move because I have to expect that that's going to be part of it. Now, luckily, I was only knocked down pretty severely, to 90 degrees or more twice on that trip. But it's a true threat, and as much of a safety net as doing that race is, which you've got other competitors, fellow sailors that are out there that are going to be in somewhat quote unquote close proximity, but you've also got the skills of Don and the team right there behind you, and even though they can sort of shrink that isolation feel of the Southern Ocean a little, it's still the Southern Ocean. And so whatever happens to you in the immediate, you're going to have to deal with every single aspect of it. And you just can't count on anybody else swooping in to save the day. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a real deal, serious, no joke sort of thing. But, it sounds like you've definitely got that in mind. I don't, just from our short talk right now, I don't get that vibe of like, oh, dude, nah, I've sailed across the ocean a few times. It should be fine. Because
yeah.
I've talked to people like that
Oh,
before, and
well, I know. Back with you and your experience. What hit home with me, and I think it happened. It happens to me as well. Is you were coming back, and the Gulf of Maine kicked your butt. And that's
oh
not
yeah,
too far. That's it can happen anywhere, can it? And that's probably the respect I have as well of the sea is, probably when people say what's the worst, what's the closest you've come to a catastrophic issue on a boat, and it was just along going to Halifax, Nova Scotia on a 64-foot Sea Raymond Hunt motor yacht, where again, say you learn your lessons. I was attempting to beat a storm and got caught out in the start of it, and almost didn't make it off the lee shore trying to get into Halifax with with low fuel, rolling a lot, and it's just that you hit those things and those sort of instances and just go, oh boy, you need to be more careful. You need to think about maybe you should have stayed in that harbor where there are 2 cows, and nothing going on, but nice and safe for 2 more. Let that storm blow out, and then go to Halifax. But
yeah.
a cheeseburger at the yacht club just it was
yeah, I know. And that's one of those things though where that's what you think about when you're out there in the conditions and you're sitting there being like, what was I thinking? But then, it only takes a long enough time for you to start to forget that stuff, and then another mistake gets made. Or you go through, I mean, when I went through this last big knockdown in 2022, so it was in December, and it was November 25th. I was like, 6 days out from Maine and about, I don't know, 400 and something miles northeast of Bermuda. And that was where I got caught up in an eddy of the Gulf Stream, and the wave that found me. But, it was kind of interesting because I have always had a bit of a battle between me and technology. I was taught by the old sailors over there in the UK, in Australia, and I've tried to learn all my lessons from the people that were doing this way before I was even born. And I went against my gut instinct because I had technology that for the first time was showing me where the currents were. I knew where the wind was. I knew the coming storm. And I was like, oh, I got this. I can worm my way right through there. And that was a huge mistake. Previous to that, I would have never done that. I would have heaved to about 100 miles before where I was and waited till that storm passed and then entered that region. And I don't know. I think the GGR is such a great it's just such a great race to put on because it's proof positive that you don't need all the tech. You can still go out there, do it like the old time sailors, the seamanship, the what if it isn't broken, don't fix it kind of mentality, and still make it around the entire planet by yourself on one of these small boats.
Yeah, and that's what attracts me because I like technology. I did a transatlantic on a fast racing 80-foot carbon fiber Zilalier cat. Where all you're thinking about, how do we slow down? How do we slow down? You just go so fast, and it's scary. And then you look at the foiling that's going on now,
Oh my gosh,
and
yeah, right.
I'm not going to be a curmudgeon, but I think it's great all this advancement. But the America's Cup now, it's like
It's a
it's
whole
way
different ball
beyond
game.
me, and you know it, it's great that there's a following for the GGR. It'll never be huge like the Vendée Globe and things like that, but
I think honestly, I think it will eventually because it's only done two iterations so far. The one you're gonna go into is going to be the third. I mean, how many Vendays have there been? They started that in '85 or something. I don't
yes,
know, somewhere in the '80s, I believe. So they've done quite a few of them, and I don't know. It's always exciting too because in a lot of ways it's kind of like a last man standing or a last sailor sailing sort of situation where if you can make it around the course without losing your mast or losing your boat and all that sort of stuff, it's like job well done. And so many big issues happen along the way that I don't know anybody that I've talked to that follows the races, whether it was 2018 or the 2022, like they loved it. They were like, every morning I'm looking and watching and seeing my updates and I'm rooting for this person or that person. And the fact that it's such an extended trip. I mean, the Vendée, what they're doing it in 70 days, something like that now. I'm
yeah,
not too sure. And so it's over really quick. You guys are going to be out there. You'll be in the Southern Ocean for more time than it takes those guys to just get around the world.
yeah. Thanks for reminding me.
Well, on that note, I guess one of the questions I have is, do you have? Because one of the things that was very, very important for me psychologically, and this might sound stupid, but was to be able to listen to a lot of audiobooks and a lot of podcasts and have that, even though it was artificial, have a voice on board. Is that something you've put any thought into quite yet? As far as I don't know. I mean, we know about the physical dangers of the ocean, the isolation, all that sort of stuff, but the mental aspect of it, which I think is over 50% of the challenge when it comes to this. Have you put in any thought of how you'll do sort of in that isolated, lonely state?
Yeah, I don't have any idea how I'll handle that. Although, I'll have to do my 2,000 mile solo with the boat that I'll be doing it in which
Right.
yeah decided. So I'll learn more then. The other thing is how many cassettes do I need for
Yeah.
250 days? What size boxes will that take up for music and
Mm-hmm.
podcasts? So that's the other thing. Um, I'm a social person. It's not like I'm a loner. I I have great friends, and I am very social, and but I also I'm an only child, so I guess I am comfortable with being on my own as well. So, but you don't know, I guess, until you get out there and do that. Um, so I guess we shall see.
I guess, yeah, no, for sure. Well, now so before I got on Sparrow and got down to the Caribbean to start sort of training and stuff, I had never solo sailed on the ocean before. It was a big roll of the dice whether or not, I did my first little passage and was like, this is nuts. No way. I don't know what I was thinking. Or like what happened, thankfully, is that I fell in love with doing that. And I found a real passion for being out there, you, the boat, and the ocean world around you, unsevered, undistracted. That's all you have. And how much actual solo sailing have you done on the ocean? Any?
Oh, let's see. I sailed my Peterson 34 solo from Boothbay Harbor, Maine to Southwest Harbor, Maine with an overnight in Batinicus. So not very long.
All right. So
yeah. And I love how the wind pipes up from the southwest on the coast of Maine there.
Yeah.
I was leaving Matinicus and motoring a bit, and then the wind picks up from the southwest, and I had a little tiller pilot, autopilot, and I thought I'll be fine with the spinnaker up, and I put the spinnaker up, and then you know how you reach the point of no return where I can't leave the helm to go get the spinnaker down because it's floating so
right. You're stuck. Ride
so
it out.
I'm screaming up the what do they call it, the Western Way, I think, going up into Somme Sound area, going, where can I hide? Where can I duck behind? I just where Hinkley is.
Yeah.
It was Green Island, and I had a little lull. I tore the spinnaker down, and just like, oh my! Again, one of those. Don't do that again.
Don't do that again, pal. Well, I have to say, knowing if you did an overnight in Matinicus, and what year would that have been?
Oh God, that was probably mid-90s, I would say. 2000, yeah, something.
All right,
probably 2001, 2002.
If you're brave enough to take a sailboat to Matinicus back then, and even today, well, not so much today, I suppose. It's a little more touristy now, but you shouldn't have any trouble getting around the world. I know Matinicus has a reputation, but back then I know it really had a reputation for being rough and tumble, firing, shots at sailboats and stuff.
On that note, because my residence was in Lincoln County, where's Rockland? Lincoln County, right?
Yeah.
I was called up to jury duty in Rockland, and the Matinicus is under that jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. And my job as a juror was to decide which cases went to court. And so you're listening all day to everything was a fisherman from Matinicus, and I'm like, he did what?
Well, it's
high on what?
Yeah, it's a self-governed little island, and had been for so long because it was so displaced from the coast. And when the weather's bad, nobody's getting out there, so they have to solve all their own problems. And now I do know quite a few of the lobstermen from Matinicus, and they have never been anything but great to me and the people that I work with at Night Marine. Probably only because I work there at Night Marine. So I don't want to bash Matinicus, but I do know back in the day it had a reputation. Holy smokes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, when I was it definitely preceded itself in Rockland. they would get ashore in Rockland and look out.
Right. Well, what exactly? I mean, are there any sort of big fears or big concerns for the actual trip around the world that are sort of in there, or on the other end of the spectrum, are there things that you're excited about and you're sort of like, this is why I want to do it. This is what I want to do.
Well, let's start with fears and unknowns. Is you never really can get a handle on. You hear so many different stories on. Do you use a drogue, or do you trail warps to try to slow yourself down? Because, and I should ask you this question. When you're in the troughs of the huge waves in the Southern Ocean, obviously the wind vane is going to it's not going to be as effective. So the worst thing you want to do is round up, broadside to the wave.
Right.
So yeah, how did you handle keeping
Uh,
yourself on the straight and narrow?
Sparrow was a very interesting boat to sail in the really big swell and even bigger breaking waves at some points. Where, yeah, I mean, there was a bit of a stall, but the Aries wind vane, it just seemed to, as we picked up speed, and I would see speeds in excess of 15, 16 knots. I think the record I saw was 20.9
Wow.
racing down a wave in the South Atlantic. And essentially, she just trucked like a freight train. She didn't want to round up any direction. She just wanted to go perfectly straight. And even though the apparent wind would drop down to almost nothing as we're surfing down this, and I can only attribute it to the hull shape and maybe the sail plan that I was using. But basically, she just stayed like she was on rails. And I think, I guess besides the hull shape, I think I was just riding. You will find after being out there for so long and doing it enough that you start to find the perfect sail plan so that you've got just the right amount of pressure to keep the boat going just fast enough, but not so fast that it's squirrely, but also not so slow that it can't surf away from those breakers. Essentially, the Morticia method,
Yeah.
which is really the Vito Dumas method, but. I don't know if I just got lucky and I never saw huge enough waves that I was completely blanketed where the wind vane would just completely go off the rails. But I think part of it too was that with the west sail being such a rounded bow that I could sail dead downwind, maybe like 5 degrees off one side or the other, which most sailors would say, you want to be like 10 or 15 degrees, that much of a variance. Sparrow didn't jibe. We crash jibed 5 times on that trip in all those days out there.
Okay.
And usually that was my own stupid mistake. I wasn't reading the conditions right. And, when you're sailing dead downwind and that wind vane is dead straight, it's not going to get kicked one way or the other because, everything's going straight in one line. So it's all boom, if that makes sense.
Yeah, my thought was, I know I saw somebody from the last GGR had just a very small handkerchief of a bulletproof sail that they just attached over their roller furler on the where the Yankee I guess would be, and just to keep the bow. So basically they're bare pulled, but
Yeah, yeah.
if they did go a few degrees the other way, it would help kick the bow down. So I guess my thought would be, and I would think about going prepared um, with drogues, and although I don't think I just from hearing about using drugs, I would want to have one on board, but probably trailing something and having some really strong points, really good strong points on either quarter,
Right,
and
right.
have it available, just to have that available to use in case I go, all right, I was knocked down there. What's the next? I can't have that again. What's my
Yeah.
next? What's my next option?
Well, and if you can, luckily, I mean, most of those, like the Jordan Series drogues and stuff, I've never used one before. I don't even have one on
Neither have I.
Sparrow. But my thinking in that is that, with the wind vane and the boomkin, I have a very busy bow and stern on a west sail, and so there's a lot of areas for chafe, a lot of areas for things to get wrapped around. My biggest nightmare is that a drogue slackens in a big steep wave or something and wraps around Mongo and rips it off my boat because,
Yeah,
then
huge
it's
concern.
all up to me. Yeah. And so, I do have about 200 feet or so of big, like 1.5 inch thick, hemp, like 3 strand old line and, a couple of anchors. I figured I could, not have so much drag that it's really putting a lot of pressure on the boat, but enough that it might slow me down a little. But that was it. I the drogue thing for me, I was always like, yeah, I want to be able to utilize the boat, and I put a lot of trust in the wisdom of John Kretschmer and
Yeah,
his book, Sailing a Serious Ocean.
I just was reading
Really,
that. Yeah,
yeah, I mean that thing is like a Bible to me. I have it on board and I'm constantly peeling through it. And his his thinking on it, when things get really out of control, he likes to run with the gale. I mean, if it's going in the right direction and stuff, he thinks it's a safe way to go about it. That's what I prefer to do. But he says when things get dangerous and completely out of control, he'd rather go up and start fore-reaching. He knows that he's going to get pounded. He might get a couple of knockdowns, but he's putting the strongest point of that boat right into those waves and knows that, the boat can outlast it, and that's what he likes to do. He doesn't like to even heave to because essentially he feels like he's not doing anything and he feels
Yeah,
unproductive.
and I guess if you forereach, then of course that low is going to be moving by you a little bit quicker than with it.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's interesting. Back to the boat designs allowed. It'll be interesting to see. I'm not. I've run a couple. I ran a Herreshoff with a 14-foot draft at one point. So
Oh, wow.
one of those things where it was a 63-foot. It was built for the Transpac and owned by.
Okay, wow. Big
It was
bulb
built,
keel and stuff.
no, just it was built in 1930 something.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
for Jascha Heifetz, the violinist. He was the rock star of the day, and but huge draft, and so
Jeez.
I got to sail that around Gulf of Maine a bit, and in some race series. That's all I really know about these big full keel, that older design. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to try to figure out what these boats will do, and I think they're going to be fairly similar because they're all full keel boats. So some are going to be faster than others, and that's the thing is, do I go with an Endeavor or an Endurance 35? Because I find if you're going to be on a boat for that long, it's got a bit of a raised saloon, but then that's a lot more windows in the Southern Ocean as well to worry about. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those were all big things that you have to take into account because they're yes, you definitely want to have comfort because again, there's the physical challenge of being out there, but when it's for such an extended period of time, 7, maybe 8 or 9 months, you have to maintain some semblance of sanity. And to do that, to make sure, or at least to help that process, is to have a little bit of creature comfort. And luckily, the West Sail definitely gave me that. I mean, it has so much room down below that I ended up building a big shelf, not only to hold a bunch of the food and tools and stuff, but also just to fill in some of the vacancy in that cabin so that if we did get tossed around, I wasn't going to fall 10 feet. I was only going to fall like 5 feet. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But yeah, I mean, full headroom, all that stuff. So I had a nice big bunk. It was comfortable. And yeah, there's something about having that living space because, yeah, I mean, you think of it this way. You're going to be living in the room for a year almost,
yeah,
and you're not going to be able to get out of there. And some might say not a room, but a cell. And
yeah,
I think that's kind of aptly named a little bit, or that would be an apt comparison. So those are definitely things that I don't think should be overlooked. And, you could even use Knox Johnson as a reference. When he was asked, would you change anything about your trip and your voyage? He didn't talk about, the fat speed of the boat or the type of sails. He actually just talked about he would have bought different food. He wouldn't have taken 350 tins of corned beef. And
yeah.
that's just a mental thing that he would have enjoyed that trip so much more if he had just a bit more of a variety in his diet. And so there's a lot of different aspects to keep that brain happy, keep you motivated. Because unfortunately, with this trip, all you got to do, especially once you get down in the Southern Ocean, is turn north and you'll find warm tropical islands. And those
Oh,
will be tempting you. They will be tempting you every time you look at your chart. So,
yeah, just the Montessier effect. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So, well, hey, Gunnar, we're getting to an hour here, but my hope is that you and I can sit down and do some check-ins along the way, basically all the way leading up till the launch for this. Are you definitely down for that?
oh yeah, for sure. I was thinking, eventually, I'm selling some property here, and a little plug. By the way, I've got a Baltic 42 for
Yeah,
sale.
plug
Yeah,
away.
so it's in Jacksonville right now, and I'm tempted to kind of keep it as my have a little bit of a base in the U.S., but really I should probably see what I can get for it and put it towards a GGR boat. So that's
Right.
if anyone
It's
wants,
not online yet for
yeah,
sale.
it's on Facebook Marketplace, and I'm just starting a webpage, gunnarsales.com.
Okay.
Early days where I'm trying to get the links working for email and whatnot. So
Well,
just
email those to me, and I'm going to put them in the description for the
okay.
YouTube page, and then also on the podcast in the description. I'll put all that stuff in there.
Yeah, because just back to what race I was going to do. I was thinking of the global solo challenge, but
Initially, right?
initially entering my Baltic 42 because I'm like, well, what's the best boat to use for any adventure? It's the boat you have.
Yeah.
But then my boat's it's built in 1976. It was built for the German Admirals Cup team back in 76, 77. But it's seen a lot of Antigua race weeks, and I rescued it for the owner died, and I rescued it from Jamaica last year. And it is luckily I got it for a real bargain, but it's got brand new sails, and I've done a bit of work to it. I'm doing some engine work now, so it should be ready for an adventure. If somebody can overlook the fact that it's not a pristine Baltic, it's actually pretty beat up, but it's kind of an allure to
Hey,
it as well.
what boat isn't?
Yeah.
Come on, slap some paint on it. Make sure check over the rigging and set
Well, it's
sail
got a new
over that
rig. It's
horizon.
2018, and it had all new rig put in as well. So
Oh,
that's
nice.
yeah. So it's got new sails, brand new. I didn't even print them on yet. UK Sales Miami, and so back to that global solo challenge. I just got to thinking, well, what am I going to do this Baltic? I'd want to pull the keel, redo all the keel bolts. I'd still do a new rig on it, even though the rig was only 2018. I'd want to make it probably tiller steering, and it's a big deal. I'm gonna get rid of the pedestal.
Yeah.
Put
That's
action to
huge.
a lot of work that would be done, and then just the fact the global solo challenge isn't a mass start. It's a staggered start depending on what what boat you have. So the fast open 40s will go later in the year. I didn't want that. I wanted because I didn't feel like there's a camaraderie where you get this camaraderie with the GGR, and that's why I kind of kiboshed that idea of doing the global solo challenge. No offense to them, I think it's a great race.
No, for sure. I mean, and hey, part of the reason that I left in 2017 was that I got wind that they were running a race in 2018, the Golden Globe, and I was like, I don't want to be out there with them. And so I bumped up a year.
Yeah, I mean that's what makes your solo around the world that much more epic. So I can only say hats off to you, and maybe I'm just a little more of a scaredy cat, right? I want to check in with Don every week.
Just a lot more sensible. Like I said, Don and I have emailed back and forth just a couple times. I'm hoping to get him on the podcast actually pretty soon here, but he had mentioned about doing the 2022, and all I could think of is I was like, there's no way Sparrow would ever be able to pass inspection and all that sort of stuff. I mean, maybe the original Golden Globe I could have showed up to back in 1968, but not this one. So, well, Gunnar, right. This has been absolutely fabulous. And yeah, let's keep in touch. And anytime you get any hits or something new happens or anything like that, hit me up because we can always do one of these real quick just as an update. I think it'd be great to follow the progress and hopefully help with the fundraising campaign. I think you're really smart for starting all this so soon and getting really proactive because I think it's going to pay off in the end for sure.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me on, and maybe the next one will be when I get the GGR boat. That might be a good one.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Well, thanks again for coming on the show, and until next time.
Thanks, Jerome. Bye.